18 years and 227 days old, wins the Spanish Grand Prix.
This is Max Verstappen. Oh, Max Verstappen! Max Verstappen raises a finger.
Everyone right now is making videos about Max Verstappen getting beaten down by 2026. And fair enough, this season has genuinely been brutal for him. But before we spend another video talking about what's breaking him down, let's talk about what actually built him in the first place. 7 drives. 7 separate moments across his career where everyone in the paddock, the pundits, even some of his own rivals, assumed he was finished before the race even started, and he simply refused to agree with them. This is the case for why counting this man out has always, historically, been a mistake, no matter how bad the car, the grid position, or the headlines looked at the time. Spain, 2016, the shock debut.
18 years and 227 days old, Max Verstappen wins a Formula One Grand Prix.
May 2016, Barcelona. 18 years old, in his very first race for Red Bull, after being promoted mid-season with almost zero warning, swapped in for Daniil Kvyat days before the weekend. Nobody in the paddock expected a result from him, let alone a win, on a car he'd barely had time to learn, having only tested it briefly before the race weekend even began. Then, on lap 1, the 2 Mercedes drivers collided with each other, and the entire race blew wide open. With 21 laps still remaining, Kimi Räikkönen filled his mirrors, an actual world champion, actively hunting an 18-year-old rookie for the race lead. Verstappen didn't crack under that pressure. He managed his tires, managed his fuel, and managed the weight of an entire sport watching to see if he'd fold under it. He crossed the line first, becoming the youngest race winner in Formula One history, on his literal first start for a brand new team, a record that stood untouched for years afterward. Helmut Marko's reaction afterward summed up the whole gamble in 4 words: "I had no doubt." Brazil 2016, walking on water.
This is Max Verstappen. Oh, Max Verstappen! Max Verstappen raises a finger in celebration.
Interlagos. Later that same rookie season, wet conditions severe enough to wreck half the grid's race entirely. Verstappen was buried outside the top 15 in a Toro Rosso that had no business being anywhere near a podium finish that afternoon. Then the rain intensified even further, and something in his driving simply switched on. Lap after lap, in conditions where most of the grid was just trying to survive without crashing, he found grip nobody else on the track could find, picking off car after car with a level of control that looked almost unfair for a rookie still in his debut season. By the time the checkered flag finally fell, he'd carved his way all the way up to 3rd place, a drive so far beyond what the car or the weather should have allowed that it's still referenced today as one of the single greatest wet weather performances this sport has ever produced. Austria 2019, the Red Bull ring charge.
Away we go, Verstappen gets an awful start. He's already been bypassed by the 2 Mercedes. Verstappen wins the Austrian Grand Prix.
Home turf for Red Bull, and Charles Leclerc had the race firmly under control, leading comfortably with the laps steadily ticking down toward what looked like a certain Ferrari victory. Verstappen had other ideas entirely. He clawed his way back through the field lap by lap, methodically closing a gap that shouldn't have been closable, and then, on the very final lap, launched a genuinely physical, no-compromise move into turn 3, taking both the position and the win in one motion. Stewards investigated the contact after the checkered flag, reviewing every angle of the footage for a potential penalty that could have handed the win straight back to Ferrari. The verdict: no further action. The win stood exactly as it happened on track. It was the kind of drive that told the rest of the grid, in no uncertain terms, exactly what kind of fight they were actually signing up for every single weekend for the rest of his career. Hungary 2022. The spin and still win.
Why? Oh, that's got to be water on the track or something, and that was just a lazy little loop.
Max Verstappen from 10th on the grid comes home to win.
A late power unit failure in qualifying buried him down in 10th on the grid. Most drivers write a weekend like that off before the race has even started. Verstappen didn't. He sliced through the midfield with real urgency, undercut his way past the race leaders on strategy, and then, midway through the Grand Prix, spun a full 360 degrees at the final corner, the kind of mistake that ends most title campaigns on the spot. He gathered the car back up, rebuilt his tire temperature lap by lap, and reconstructed the entire gap from scratch as if the spin had never happened at all. He won the race by 7.8 seconds anyway. His own team boss called it one of the best drives of his career, and that's coming from a man who's personally watched every single one of them from the pit wall. Okay, quick pause here. Make sure you're smashing that hype button because the next 3 drives are even more ridiculous than what you just watched. Belgium, 2022. Total destruction.
Pass a car, at least one car every lap.
What, like that?
Yeah.
Max Verstappen gets past his teammate Sergio Perez, winning the Belgian Grand Prix.
Grid penalties buried him down in 14th place at Spa-Francorchamps, one of the easiest circuits on the entire calendar to actually overtake on, which should have made this a fairly routine recovery drive through the field. It wasn't routine. It was a complete massacre of the rest of the grid. He sliced through 14 cars so efficiently and so quickly that by the time the checkered flag fell, he was lapping cars that had actually qualified ahead of him at the start of the race. This wasn't really a comeback story in the traditional sense, the kind where a driver claws back a handful of positions and calls it a job well done. It was a live demonstration of exactly how enormous the gap between him and the rest of the field could become on the right weekend. Sao Paulo, 2024, 17th to 1st.
Max Verstappen wins the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, 17th on the grid to the win.
A completely wrecked wet qualifying session left him down in 17th on the grid, right in the middle of a title fight that, at the time, he was genuinely losing on points. This was supposed to be the race that finally proved his critics right. Instead, in mixed and constantly changing conditions, he produced one of the single most complete drives of his entire career, picking his way through car after car with total precision and 0 mistakes, and crossed the finish line in 1st place. 17th to 1st in one single race. During the exact stretch of the season, everyone had already started writing him off. It became one of the defining, title-shaping drives of his entire championship run that year. The kind of result that swings a title fight not just on points, but on momentum and belief. Defying the machine.
Max Verstappen wins the Japanese Grand Prix.
By 2025, Red Bull genuinely wasn't the fastest car on the grid anymore. McLaren had them beaten comfortably across the entire Suzuka weekend in every session. Then qualifying happened, and Verstappen somehow dragged a pole position lap out of a car that had absolutely no business being anywhere near the front row, beating Lando Norris by just 12 thousandths of a second. Fernando Alonso, watching from the sidelines after being eliminated himself, put it best afterward. Only he can do it, only he can do it. I think there is no other driver at the moment that can put a car so high or higher than it actually deserves. He then held off both McLarens for the entire Grand Prix distance, defending under real pressure lap after lap, and won anyway, becoming the first driver in Formula One history to win 4 consecutive Japanese Grands Prix. 7 drives. 7 separate moments where the car wasn't good enough, the grid position wasn't good enough, or the conditions themselves weren't good enough, and somehow none of it actually mattered by the end. That's not luck repeating itself 7 times over 8 years. That's a genuine, repeatable pattern, one that's shown up in wet races, dry races, home races, and away races alike. Whatever 2026 throws at him next, this is the real resume he's building it against, whether the current headlines want to admit it or not. Smash that hype button, subscribe, and we'll see you at the next one.